Psychology. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to revert back to middle school me and quote Webster's dictionary here, as psychology is defined as the science or study of the mind and behavior. Now, there are a plethora of options out there for psychological thrillers in movies and TV shows, like the movie from 2006 Prestige, Split from 2016, and Shutter Island from 2010, one of my personal favorites. But there's also some series like Hannibal that ran from 2013 to 2015, Channel Zero from 2016 to 2018, and The Following from 2013 to 2015. If you cannot tell, this was a huge craze and a huge following in the early 2010s. It was right off the heels of Shutter Island, which people were just clamoring over, and then birthed just a plethora of shows revolving the concept. Now, whether psychology was done well in said movies or shows, I would say it was a mixed bag, with most of the shows being complete garbage except for Hannibal. Hannibal is critically acclaimed, I'm pretty sure. It also could not be. I'll put it on screen if it's not. And with movies, they had a hard time finding a good audience that would watch it and make the movies profitable. With Prestige not being the most profitable, and Split being renowned as not that great of a movie, even though I personally liked it. The only outlier that I see is mostly Shutter Island, which was immensely popular, it's rated well, and it's one of my all-time favorites. But that is not the one we will be talking about today, because the one we will be talking about today is called Mindhunters. Now, this is one of my great pleasures in life, being able to see this show, but it was also one of my greatest displeasures when I found out midway through watching it that it got canceled before it was able to finish its story. Netflix, and all their glory, decided to cancel it after 2 seasons for the findings of it being too niche and not getting enough viewing numbers whenever we were releasing it in the prime of Netflix too, so can't imagine. Now, even though the show when it was coming out was not getting the numbers and views that it was wanting at the time, I can easily tell you that people are loving the show now, and it's gotten a great deal of success on Netflix throughout the years. And because of this, they are saying that they're trying to get around 3 2-hour movies out on Netflix to finish out the story, which I have nothing against. I obviously would love it. I wish it was just a continuation of the show, but I guess we'll get the movies instead, which I personally can't hate. But also, it hasn't been confirmed. It's mostly just talkings with the director and the actors that would be associated with it. So you can always take it with a grain of salt. But I think that it could be a thing, and I would hope there would be a thing, because damn, this show was phenomenal. Now, without further ado, I think we should just jump right into it. I am going to be talking about the first 2 episodes of the first season of Mindhunters. So, in case you think that that's big enough of a spoils where you're gonna watch it anyways, I guess skip the video? I don't know. I think it would be a good synopsis to get you into the show, because I would say it is one of my all-time favorites, and I think it deserves more praise than it's getting, especially since it got cut. Now, the first ever scene in this show that really grabs you by the throat and rides you along with this story is one of my favorite thriller scenes I've seen in a while, where you have Jonathan Groff's character, or otherwise known as Olaf. He is a hostage negotiator, and he's trying to talk down a dude who has a couple hostages in the warehouse that he's in, and he is saying that he is invisible to people and that he knows no one can see him, and then you learn later that he's off of his meds and that he's just kind of going insane. I feel that this is an amazing way to immediately grab your attention to a show that is already apeshit to begin with, since it's mostly just about them interviewing serial killers, or they call it sequence killers in the show, and that's like, just like they just grab you, and they're like, come with us, and it is a phenomenal watch. He basically just like goes crazy for a little bit and starts yapping his ass off to him, tells him to get everyone away, tells him to bring him something, I forgot what. I think it was food. But then he goes inside, he comes back out every once in a while to ask for his wife. Now, that's a big deal. He's asking for his wife because apparently they had a random out of nowhere fight. And that random out of nowhere fight, where he realized that his wife was mad at him, sparked and changed something in him to make him go crazy, which I find incredibly interesting. I think that them going deep into what was going on with him psychology wise or psychologically is just otherworldly perfection. I think that this concept of a show is just so interesting. Now, I do want to give a little bit of a trigger warning for suicide and also just like brutal, like it's brutal. Like what they do in the show is brutal, and I think that that should be warned. So I'm giving you a warning right now. Trigger warning for suicide, mass murderers, and like just a lot of disgusting stuff. I always love learning more and more about this type of stuff, and I think that this opening scene just gets you right along with what they will be talking about in this type of show. Um, to be fair, it is a little bit quick. It goes by really fast because after he finds out that the wife is just still angry at him and that she's not there for him, he immediately kills himself. A real depressing scene there. And then we go to Jonathan Groff's character. He's teaching at the school for the FBI, and he's teaching pacifying ways to bring down a hostage, and everyone's just being like, I would rather use guns, this is dumb as shit. And even though he's trying his hardest to get them to understand that it's a big deal what they're doing and that they need to deal with it passively and they can't use brute force all the time, they immediately dismay him. They're like, whatever you say, old man, I would rather just shoot my gun. That's why I'm even in the police force in the first place. There you go for the 70s, I guess. And then he walks up to a bunch of people who are also professors there who kind of agree with him on their beliefs on how it's hard to catch serial killers nowadays because they're just crazy people instead of just someone who snaps and does something out of nowhere like the husband did it and stuff like that. It's random people who don't know them are just picking them up off the street and killing them. And I think that that is a interesting thing to talk about for an entire TV show, and it caught my attention. Now, it doesn't get fully started until Holden Ford, Jonathan's character, meets up with Bill Tench, played by Holt McCallany, and they go on the road school, which is they just go to cops, like random police stations, and just teach them what the FBI knows about deviant behavior to help them solve the crimes that they are dealing with. In the first two episodes, they're dealing with a guy who was beating up old women or just killing them, but brutalizing their dog, which is just yikes. And because of that, they go to a guy named Ed Kemper. I would just look him up. I'll put him up here right now because I don't want to get into it because he is a horrible person. But Ed Kemper helps them get into the mind of what someone who's crazy like them would do and think in that scenario and what could have happened to him beforehand to lead down such a rabbit hole that he's in now. Like, did his parents split up or anything like that? It's called deviant behavior, or another thing you call it is a lasting effect that happens because because even though they're insane. So normal stuff that happens to us, like your parents got divorced or you're now married and stuff like that, they can take that differently than we do. And so they have to go to other people that think like them to get into their mind and see how can they solve this crime. That's basically the crux of the first two episodes that they have out there. They get more in depth of what deviant behavior is and what can spark a change in someone. I find that incredibly interesting with people who think like them, who are crazies or just mentally ill. I feel like is the best term for it, actually. People who are mentally ill, they they don't think like we do, and so it's hard to catch them whenever they like break and do something horrible, whether they kill their mom or they off someone else. It's a huge thing, and they try to catch it before anything bad happens. Um, there's one great arc for a couple episodes that I really like that's later in the series that I'll bring up right now, only because it's such a small thing. There's a dude, there's a principal of an elementary school that does this thing called tickles for nickels, where they tickle the kids' feet as like a form of punishment, but then also gives them a nickel if they can withstand it. Then Holden kind of makes it a huge deal. It's a whole thing where some people don't care because they see nothing wrong with it because the kids enjoy it, and it's just tickling. Apparently, people were real free with their kids, I guess, back then. But there was also people who found it really weird and thought it was something that could lead to something worse. And I feel like harking on the fact that premature crime solving, I would say, is something that is hard to do because you can't know for sure that that person is going to become the person you're worried they're going to become. Um, and so because of that, they have this whole thing where they're like, should I do something about this or should I just leave it be? And Holden just keeps going back to it because he's aggravated about it and he just keeps getting sucked in to like, how do these people think? With everyone, it gets into his love life a little bit. It gets into his just regular life where he just can't think straight, and so he has a hard time dealing with what he wants to do in the situation, and it's just a huge deal for him. And I find that inner conflict fascinating because you see a dude who was amazed by how much they can get from the serial killers at the start. He's like weird about it too. He's like, I can't wait to do this. And then he goes into the principal and he's like, we are the FBI and I'm telling you, you need to stop. And he's like, I'm not doing anything. And then you guys can fuck off. It's an amazing watch that I really think you guys should watch because it gets more in depth. I can't talk about it fully because I want you guys to watch the show. It's only 2 seasons on Netflix and it is phenomenal. I would say that because of that, this show was unjustifiably canceled because it brings out such a great talking point that I think people should be talking about more. And stuff like this, when it gets canceled, it almost dies out the conversation entirely. And like for like common people who like to talk about just what's going on in media, I feel like stuff like this is a great way to understand why some of the bad things that are happening in this world are happening. So you don't just go crazy. Everybody's like, oh my God, bad things are happening. And that's because the world is dying or the world is sick. It's just because some people are thinking differently. And because of that, people do worse things than me and you would ever do. Right, viewer? You wouldn't do anything weird, right? I would hope so. But to end off our episode there, I would say go ahead and watch it. It is phenomenal. Olaf does a great job as Ford. They do an amazing job. And I think there is no better way to spend your evening after work or just after school, or whatever you do, and just chillax and watch a couple episodes of Mindhunters. And without further ado, Zach the Critic has critiqued his show of the week.